What's up, guys? Welcome to Thoughts by Mara with me, Mara Sullivan. Today we're going down the rabbit hole of things that led to the demise of Michael Jackson. Right up front, I want to say that I do believe Michael Jackson is an innocent man. He was fully acquitted on all accounts. There were 2 FBI investigations done. Nothing was ever found, not one single shred of evidence. In fact, the mother of one of the accusers was charged for fraud. She straight up lied on this man. Everyone lied on this man, but the media has ignored that side of the story. I do not take the subject of sexual abuse or child molestation lightly at all. Everything I'm saying and believe is a result of my own research, and I highly encourage you to do your own research, think for yourself, and come to your own conclusions. One of the top themes in my content on this show is encouraging people to think for themselves and not blindly follow other people, not me, not anyone else. Think for yourself. Take the time to study and learn about things before forming an opinion. Do I believe Michael Jackson was perfect? Of course not. But do I believe he's innocent regarding the child allegations? Yes, I do. And even in death, Michael Jackson is still facing the same charge again, which we will get into. The same 2 men who defended Michael Jackson when he was alive turned around 30 years later and said, actually, he did abuse us when we were kids. The Leaving Neverland men. There's so many holes in that story. But today, right now, in the year 2026, Wade Robson and James Safechuck have a civil lawsuit against Michael Jackson's companies because obviously he's not here to defend himself. These greedy, cash-grabbing men are seeking $400 million from this man in his death. They will not let it go. These same 2 people who defended Michael Jackson when he was alive on trial, they defended him when he was alive. The Casio family is also suing Michael's estate, even though they also defended him when he was alive. They said Michael was family. And Frank Casio, the same man who's suing Michael Jackson's estate today, he wrote a book literally called, I shit you not, this man wrote a book called My Friend Michael, where he describes Michael as a mentor, a big brother, and a friend. But now all of a sudden he remembers Michael as a predator. After seeing the attention and money that the Leaving Neverland men made, it's just a coincidence that he's basically following their lead by continuing to make money off of this man's name and trying to exploit the estate at the same time that the Michael movie comes out. And it is the #1 movie in the world, making more money than anything else, while Michael's estate is also making more money because most of the world is listening to his music nonstop. That means royalty checks for the estate. We're buying merch, and we're making Michael's estate even wealthier. It's just a coincidence. That's not suspicious at all. But that's jumping ahead to today. We'll come back to them later. Right now, let's start from the beginning. For legal purposes, everything I'm saying in this episode is alleged. I am making all of this up. Do not believe a single word I say. Liar, liar, pants on fire. That's me this entire episode. Nothing I'm saying is true. Got it? Got it. Cool. Let's travel back in time to 1982. Michael Jackson released Thriller, the best-selling album of all time. It was released in November 1982, and The Girl Is Mine was released as the single. That's the song Michael Jackson did with Paul McCartney from the Beatles. They teamed up. Michael wanted to be more than a black artist with a black audience. He wanted to cross over, for lack of better words. He wanted to be the biggest entertainer in the world, and he knew he needed to appeal to a white audience in order to do that. The album dropped with The Girl Is Mine being the single. It started getting Michael more white listeners, of course, but the album itself was not an instant hit, and The Girl Is Mine is obviously not the song that ends up being the biggest hit from Thriller. But it did serve its purpose in helping Michael appeal to a wider audience and a whiter audience. It dropped November 1982, and for the first 3 or 4 months, it's actually not a huge deal. By early 1983, January, February 1983, Billie Jean and Beat It are becoming hits and starting to make some waves. But then in March 1983, Michael Jackson does 2 things that change the course of history, the course of his life, and catapults him and catapults this Thriller album into oblivion. Number 1, Michael convinces executives to play his videos on MTV. On March 10th, 1983, Billie Jean airs on MTV for the first time. Michael Jackson becomes the first Black artist to get played on MTV. And MTV does not just air Billie Jean, they play and play and play and play and replay some more. They air the hell out of Billie Jean. At that point, the M in MTV stood for Michael. MTV was transformed into Michael TV. After Billie Jean was aired and in heavy rotation on the MTV, the MTV album, the Thriller album, starts selling way more copies, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, Thriller is just like changing the world, like taking over. Thriller starts taking over. I promise all of this ties into the allegation stuff. Just roll with me for a bit. The first wave of Thriller hysteria started when the video played on MTV March 10th, 1983. The second thing Michael Jackson did 2 weeks later, on March 25th, 1983, was Motown 25. He performs Billie Jean, he does the moonwalk for the first time, and it is off to the races after that. Like, he officially becomes Michael Jackson. He goes from being Michael Jackson, the Black kid with the insane talent from the cute boy band. He goes from that to being Michael Jackson, the global phenomenon. And then in December 1983, the end of that year, Michael drops the Thriller short film. It's a 14-minute music video for the song Thriller, which I find hilarious. Like, he drops that in December. Like, I find hilarious that it didn't come out around Halloween, because it's basically a Halloween song, but that's beside the point. The Thriller short film music video makes the album even bigger, and that's reportedly when the thing like happens where the Thriller album starts selling 1 million copies a week. Remember that the album has already been out for a year at that point, but I think it's important to note how it got bigger as time went on, because today artists are really obsessed with immediate numbers. Not just artists, but society in general. We want instant everything, and if something doesn't work within 5 minutes, it must be a failure. Let things take time. Give things time to cook, and promote the hell out of it after it's released. Don't just do something once and make a drop and that's it. Like, put something out there. Like, putting something out there is only the beginning. You still got to continue to build once the thing is out there. So what does any of this have to do with the beginning of the end for Michael Jackson? Let's backtrack. Remember how I told you Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney linked up for the Girl Is Mine collaboration? They also did a song for Paul McCartney's album, the song called Say, Say, Say. It is a great song. While they were working together, Paul McCartney talked to Michael Jackson about the importance of publishing, licensing, ownership. Paul told Michael that the real power in the music business is ownership. And so, in 1983, Michael becomes the biggest star on the planet. January 1984, the Pepsi commercial incident happens, and in a weird, very unfortunate way, that commercial does make Michael even bigger and even more famous. It makes him a spectacle. Even though he already was, this makes him even more of a spectacle. All of this is happening back to back. The first few months of 1984, Michael is in the hospital. He donates all of the money he received from Pepsi for the incident to the burn center at the hospital. But this also starts his painkiller addiction. Joe Jackson wants to capitalize off of the whole Michael mania that's going on, and he pressures him into performing with his brothers again for the Victory Tour. By July 1984, Michael is back on the road with the Jacksons on the Victory Tour, not fully healed from the burn, which I believe heightened his painkiller addiction. For obvious reasons, he was not allowed to fully recover. I'm not saying even if he had more time, he wouldn't have developed the addiction, but having to go on tour certainly didn't help. It's just a common sense thing. The tour lasted from July to December 1984. Michael says this whole Joe Jackson family band thing is done. He ends the tour, he ends the family Jackson 5 thing, ends his relationship, or basically he ends his management with Joe Jackson finally. He donates all of the money he makes from the Victory Tour to charity because, remember, he made enough money from the Thriller album to be set for life, not to mention all the success and money he had since childhood. He was good financially. So good, in fact, that the next year, 1985, he takes the advice he got from Paul McCartney a while back, and he buys the ATV music catalog, the biggest music publishing acquisition in history. And yes, the music he bought did include Beatles songs. But what people forget is that Paul McCartney was first offered to buy his songs, and he refused to. Even if Michael Jackson didn't buy the Beatles catalog, someone else would have, because Paul McCartney turned it down. He said no to buying his own music. I'm sure that never in a million years did Paul McCartney think the person that would end up buying it was Michael Jackson. Naturally, I'm sure it just stung more because they have some sort of friendship, and Paul is the one who gave Michael Jackson that advice about publishing and ownership in the first place. I'm sure he was like, I told you to own music. I didn't tell you to own my music. And yes, I also believe it stung because Michael Jackson is black. I'm sorry, I'm not putting words in Paul McCartney's mouth. If you've been listening to this show, you guys know how much I love Paul McCartney. But at the end of the day, Michael Jackson is and always will be a black man. And regardless of that, I feel like anyone would have felt some type of way for showing someone how to play the game and then get it outplayed by the person you taught how to play the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what happened. I would feel some type of way about that too. Like, it's human nature. Pun intended. However, I don't feel bad about the situation because Paul was offered to buy his music and he said no. End of story. Now, the ATV publishing deal, I believe Michael Jackson put a target on his back that ultimately led to his death. Allegedly, remember, I'm making all of this up. Do not believe anything I'm saying. Michael didn't buy ATV publishing to piss off Paul McCartney because it wasn't only Beatles music. More importantly, it included songs by black artists from the 1950s through the 1970s that Michael loved, and most of those artists were scammed out of their royalties because of racism, and they never got their proper credit. Michael gave, not sold. Michael Jackson gave Little Richard his publishing back, which set Little Richard up pretty nice. Like, he was riding high after that. And Michael didn't have to do that, but he did. It's kind of like Robin Hood. Michael was kind of being Robin Hood. I heard someone say he was the Malcolm X of the music business. In 1986, he was diagnosed with lupus and vitiligo. He had already had vitiligo for years, but I think he might not have gotten an official diagnosis until 1986. That is the skin condition. He started wearing the infamous white glove in 1983 to cover up the vitiligo. So he definitely already had it. In 1987, he started really speaking out even more about the mistreatment of Black artists in the industry, and he supported the NAACP that year. 1988 and 1989, Michael is still on the bad tour. He's doing his thing. In 1990, he started negotiations with Sony on a deal that I believe ended up costing him his life. After over a year of negotiations, in March 1991, Michael Jackson and Sony announced a 15-year contract, 6 albums, a film contract, and Michael becomes CEO of his own record label, now known as MJJ Music. It was the most lucrative contract in music history. It is my belief, it's my theory, that the plan was for Sony to control and steal from Michael from the jump. And I also have no doubt that Michael Jackson's lawyers were working more for Sony than they were for Michael Jackson. And they were all setting him up to take him down. In fact, Michael fired his main lawyer, John Branca, in 2003 because of suspicions of Branca going behind his back and working with Sony. And Branca was mysteriously rehired by Michael in 2009, 8 days before he died, and got involved with Michael's will right after Michael died, and appointed himself as co-executor of his estate. Michael's daughter, Paris Jackson, has literally just sued John Branca, this attorney that Michael had been working with for years. Paris Jackson has just sued John Branca over allegations of financial mistreatment, lack of transparency, and self-dealing. All stuff I believe that he has been doing since the start of the Sony deal back in 1990. But remember, don't believe anything I say. Everything I'm saying is made up. The 15-year contract is signed with Sony in 1991, 15 years. In 1992, Michael Jackson meets Jordan Chandler and his family, the first person to accuse Michael Jackson of child SA. The following year, in 1993, you cannot tell me that shit was not set up. In 1992, Michael Jackson's car broke down on the side of the road. He calls the cops. The cops don't come because, one, they're known for not showing up if it's a non-emergency, which I do get. Like, he's like, I called the cops, they didn't show up. And two, who the hell is gonna believe someone calling 911 and saying, "Hi, yes, I'm Michael Jackson and my car just broke down on the side of the road"? They probably laughed and hung up, like anyone would do. I would do that. Michael ends up getting towed to a rent-a-wreck place owned by Jordan Chandler's stepfather, David Schwartz, who he does what anyone would do when Michael freaking Jackson walks into your car shop. He calls his wife and she brings her son. They all become friends. Michael welcomes them into his world. Eventually, he welcomes them into his home. Remember, David Schwartz is Jordan Chandler's stepfather. Jordan Chandler's biological father is Evan Chandler, a dentist. Allegedly, Evan Chandler becomes jealous of Michael's relationship with his son, Jordan, in 1993. He specifically Evan Chandler is also in a heated divorce and custody battle with his wife, Jordan's mother, June Schwartz. It's been said that Evan Chandler mainly used his medical diploma to supply his celebrity clients with drugs they could not otherwise legally buy, which Carrie Fisher wrote in her autobiography. Like, she basically confirmed that. Chandler's medical diploma was also revoked at least once from malpractice, and so he was already a shady person, a shady dentist. He starts making allegations that Michael is abusing his son. His son, Jordan Chandler, sternly denies all allegations that Michael abused him. Evan Chandler, in my opinion, is not happy with the denial. He's just not happy with it. While extracting a tooth from his son, he administers sodium amytal, a drug known for false memories to be implanted. And he asks Jordan again if Michael molested him. Jordan, drugged by a drug that is never used to extract a tooth, Jordan says yes. Sodium amytal is a barbiturate that puts people in a hypnotic state. It is not needed to extract a tooth. Remember, Evan Chandler is known for giving celebrities access to drugs they cannot get anywhere else. He is going through a nasty divorce and a custody battle with Jane Chandler. He's seemingly, allegedly, jealous of Michael Jackson's relationship with Jordan, and probably jealous of Michael Jackson in general, in my humble opinion. It's also been said that Evan has always wanted to pursue a career in Hollywood as a screenwriter, and he wanted it so bad that he changed his last name to Chandler. His original last name is Evan Sharmitz. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he thought it was, quote unquote, he thought his last name was too Jewish sounding, in his own words. He changed his last name. Anyway, he drugs his son into making a false confession, allegedly. And he was forced to admit that he administered the unnecessary drug in 1994. Michael's insurance company convinces Michael to settle the case out of court for around $20 million. I'm sure it was because it was faster than going on trial. They probably wanted it over with as fast as possible, and also because Michael was going on tour soon and they could make all that money back easily. What's really interesting is that Evan Chandler did not push for a criminal trial in the first place. If Michael Jackson really was a predator, why push for the civil case first to extract money rather than fight for the more important criminal trial to see the abuser locked in jail? That's what any good parent would want to happen to someone who abuses their child. Lock him up and throw away the key. Evan Chandler didn't want the criminal trial because they were seeking money. Mostly him, but the whole family ended up getting money. Number two, two separate grand juries refused to press criminal charges against Michael Jackson in the 1993 case due to a lack of evidence. The Chandler family refused to cooperate with the police after they got their money from the civil case, so the criminal case was dropped. Why would the family just magically drop a case after they got the money? You tell me. Jordan Chandler's stepfather, David Schwartz, recorded Evan Chandler saying, "If I go through with this, I win big time." And then David asks, "Does that help Jordy? Does that help Jordan, the boy?" And Evan Chandler replies, "That's irrelevant to me." The whole thing was never about Jordan. Evan literally said his son was irrelevant to him when it came to this case. You can look it up and listen to the tape. After the settlement, Jordan Chandler emancipated himself from both of his parents at 14 years old. If he saw his parents as people who were protecting him from a monster, why would he file for emancipation from them, especially as a minor? I believe he wanted to get away. He knew that he had been used and manipulated, and it was not by Michael Jackson. And then in 2005, Jordan Chandler filed a restraining order against his father, Evan Chandler. He said his father tried to kill him with a dumbbell, sprayed him with mace, and tried to choke him. But the media was having too much fun, painting Michael Jackson as this awful, gross, most hated man to cover the other side. They were too distracted by all that to cover the other side of Jordan's story and who the real predator was. In 1995, Michael Jackson sells 50% of his share of the ATV catalog to Sony. I have no doubt Sony wanted the whole catalog, but I believe it's one of the main reasons that they signed with Michael Jackson in the first place. But Michael Jackson sold them 50%. 1996, Michael is on the history tour. 1997, he has his first kid, Prince, with Debbie Rowe. He has Paris in 1998. I did not know that me and Paris are born the same year. I kind of love that. And he has Blanket in 2002. Prince, Paris, and Blanket. I know those are not their actual names, but those are the names that I remember them as. Michael starts having more issues with Sony and Tommy Mottola. In 2001, the Invincible album comes out. Allegedly, Michael refuses to tour the album. He's a father now. He does not want to be on the road. He also just deserves a damn break. like I wouldn't want to tour either. Like Sony in turn allegedly refuses to promote the Invincible album. In 2002, Michael Jackson publicly calls Tommy Mottola a racist and a devil. Racist in part because Michael heard Tommy refer to another artist as a fat ninja, and devil. Devil because if you read anything about Tommy Mottola, the shoe just fits. The shoe fits devil. Mariah Carey was pretty vocal about the way that Tommy Mottola treated her. Michael asked to be let out of his contract. He was not happy with them. They weren't happy with him, but they were making so much money off of him, they said no. You know who else had a 15-year contract with Sony and asked to be let out, and they told them no? George Michael. George Michael described his agreement with Sony as professional slavery. And he said they treated him like a piece of software. It's really reminding me of Prince and his situation with Warner Brothers, when Prince was literally performing with the word slave written on his face. Michael publicly calls out Tommy Mottola in 2002. And in 2003, Michael Jackson is arrested with SA. He calls out Tommy Mottola from Sony in 2002, and in 2003, Michael Jackson's arrested. Coincidentally, right after standing up to Sony and holding protests with Al Sharpton and publicly saying that Tommy Mottola is a racist and devilish, and that the music business takes advantage of their artists, especially the black ones. Michael just so happens to get arrested and hit with the same charge again the next year. This kid, Gavin Arvizo, his mother had a history of targeting celebrities. Just the year before, in 2001, she applied for public assistance, food stamps, and medical insurance in 2001, saying that she had no income or assets. In reality, she and her children had recently received a substantial payout from a civil lawsuit against JCPenney. She had just had a payout from a huge business. I know kids today don't remember JCPenney, but it was big back in the day. There's also reports of this mother going after Jay Leno, Chris Tucker, George Lopez. Remember how I said in Chandler's case, Evan Chandler pressed for the civil trial so he could get the settlement money? Michael Jackson learned from that, which is why he fought the 2005 trial, and also I believe the laws had changed by that point. Like you never allow a civil case to proceed until the criminal case is over. It's not even allowed anymore. You must have the criminal trial first before the civil trial. Back in 1993, it was allowed in California at the time, and the Chandlers obviously milked that for all it was worth. However, a decade later in 2005, the accuser's family couldn't benefit financially like the other family did in 1993. Jackson's defense used inconsistencies along with the history of family targeting to other celebrities to aggressively attack the mother's credibility. When questioned about the welfare inconsistencies, she refused to testify. Like, duh. She refused to testify because she was guilty. But I'm a liar. Don't believe anything I say. There was evidence that Janet Arvizo, this mother again, had committed welfare fraud and perjury and had a history of coaching her children to lie. But there has never been any evidence found on Michael Jackson molesting children. Ever. Michael Jackson was found not guilty on all charges. The media slandered Michael's name so bad during that time. And yes, I do believe Tommy played a huge role in the circus that trial became and how brutal the attack was against Michael Jackson, although he had been found innocent again. The damage in large part had already been done. The media made sure of that, or so they thought. They thought they had the last say. They still think they have the last say, but they don't. In 2008, Michael released the 25th anniversary of Thriller, and it debuts at #1 in 8 countries. And Michael realizes, he's like, oh shit, I'm still #1. He's still the biggest artist on the planet. He decides to go on tour. His last tour, the This Is It tour. He can pay off his debt from all the allegations. He knows that the demand is still there from the fans. They want to see him again. The tour is supposed to start March 2009, but Michael wanted more time to perfect the show. So the start of the tour was pushed to July 2009, which I believe ended up being a fatal mistake. Michael wanted to rehearse specifically at the Staples Center in Los Angeles because it had all the fancy technology, the amenities he wanted to use, and, I believe he stayed in LA a little too long. Who knows what would have happened had he not pushed the dates back and been on the road, inaccessible to certain powerful people. He had literally been telling his mother, Katherine Jackson, multiple times he told her that there were evil, greedy people who wanted him gone, who wanted him dead. Had he been on the road, things might have been different. We'll never know. But as we all know, on June 25th, 2009, exactly 2 weeks before his tour, Dr. Conrad Murray administered Michael Jackson a lethal dose of propofol. And there was roughly 82 minutes, over a whole hour and 20 minutes from the time Murray discovered Michael Jackson was not breathing until he called 911. Instead of immediately dialing 911, Murray spent the time making personal phone calls and attempting to hide the evidence before instructing a security guard to make the call at 12:21 p.m. In other words, Conrad Murray allegedly waited until Michael was dead to call the police. He didn't even make the call. He told the security guard to make the call. Like, Murray did CPR on the bed with one hand. Y'all can't convince me that he didn't, he couldn't have cared less. And he used the excuse of Michael administering himself the propofol when he left the room, so he didn't know. So you're a doctor who knows this man has a possible drug problem, and you leave him in a room alone with enough of a drug for him to die. Whoops, my mistake. Just a mistake. And you saw him in time to try to save him, but you choose not to. And guess who coincidentally committed suicide 4 months after Michael Jackson died? Evan Chandler. Jordan Chandler's father, who made the first allegation and allegedly, but he said it, like he admitted it, drugged his son into falsely accusing Michael Jackson. Evan Chandler took his life on November 2009. Michael Jackson died July 2009. Evan Chandler committed suicide just 4 months after Michael Jackson died. As of 2026, the Casio family, who defended Michael Jackson when he was alive, are accusing him of abuse now, the same thing the Leaving Neverland men did, and shame on Oprah Winfrey for giving them a platform, and also shame on Oprah for her interview with Michael in 1993. She was so disrespectful in that interview, asking if Michael was a virgin, why he grabs his crotch when he dances. And to her credit, those were things that the public wanted to know, but it was just so classless and rude. I remember being a kid watching that interview and being uncomfortable for Michael Jackson, and now, like, whenever that interview comes up, everyone comments how nasty Oprah conducted that interview. I'm so glad that is not just me. It's like she always goes out of her way to make him look bad. By the way, that interview took place in 1993, the same year that the first allegation happened. And then her giving the Leaving Neverland mockumentary a platform, that was awful. Also, Netflix doing this documentary called The Verdict is such clickbait. It is clickbait. The producer of this is James Goldstein, already known to produce inaccurate films. He was the editor of Living with Michael Jackson documentary, which only looked awful and made Michael look bad because of the way it was edited. This is the same guy producing The Verdict on Netflix. And Anya Cooper is also working on this film. She also worked with Amos Pictures, which is the company that created Leaving Neverland. That being said, The Verdict on Netflix is not an unbiased film, even though the trailer might want you to think it is. Like, it might want you to think that it's painting Michael as innocent. It's being led by two anti-Michael Jackson people who I believe are just looking to capitalize on the success of the biopic. Again, it's the #1 movie in the world. Netflix is literally exploiting the success of the movie. Do what you will with this information. Do your own research. Draw your own conclusions. That is it for this episode. Long live the king. Thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you in my next one. Bye.